Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Henry Kravis. I'm chairman of SEO's board of directors, and I'm very happy to welcome you to our interview tonight. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining. And we do this as a great lead up to our SEO 2022 awards dinner, which is coming up in a few weeks. So tonight, it is my pleasure to welcome first off Javier Gutierrez. It's particularly satisfying because Javier is one of our distinguished SEO career alumni. Javier is the president and chief executive officer of the Arizona Coyotes hockey team. When he stepped into this role in 2020, he became the first Latino president and CEO in the history of the NHL. In this role, he oversees all the business operations, the strategic planning that he has, significant organizational decision-making, government relations for the club, and last but not least, make sure he's got the right coach in place so that the team has a great record and the fans continue to come out and support the club. Javier joined the Coyotes after a long and distinguished career, both as a business executive, an investor and deal maker, focused on investment management, corporate strategy, finance, and business development. And most recently, before taking on his latest job with the Coyotes, Javier was a managing director at Clear Lake Capital Group. He serves on the boards of multiple financial institutions, civic organizations, and not-for-profits, and has consistently shown commitment to using his very important standing and position to open the door for others. And he's done an incredible job at that. He launched his career in finance by participating in 1994 in SEO's summer career program, and in which he joined Lehman Brothers at that time. And so I can tell you, as chair of the board, we are very proud to count you, Javier, as one of our more than 21,000 SEO alumni across the globe. So thank you very much for joining with me to have this discussion. Let me kick it off by just asking you a little bit about your early life, just to put it in perspective. Your success story, which is fantastic, and it's as I think about it, it's extremely inspiring, not only to me, but to anybody that has a chance to think through what you've gone through. You're born in Mexico. Your family immigrated to Northern California when you were young, and then you were raised in San Jose and went to a very prestigious prep school there, at Bellarmine College Prep, and that got you into Harvard and to Stanford Law. So not so shabby. Tell us how this all happened. How did your family and how did education set you on the path that you're on?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, Henry, thank you so very much. I cannot tell you what an honor this is. I feel truly, truly blessed by this recognition, by SEO. SEO has meant so much to me in my life, in my career, and I just don't have words to describe how proud I am of this recognition. And I do also want to thank you and all the leadership at SEO for just the impact that you make each and every day to not only diversify corporate America and Wall Street and the investment management business, but really to truly change lives. And so I feel really, really just excited about being part of this event and tonight. As you mentioned, I feel very blessed to have lived the American dream. I'm an immigrant to this country. I came as an undocumented immigrant, subsequently became a citizen of the United States. But my parents had this vision this country being the place that their children, I'm the oldest of four, that their children could have a better life. And I have been blessed to have lived that American dream. And it's based in this belief that education can be the pathway for success. My parents did not go to college. My dad was a machinist. My mother was a stay-at-home mom and didn't really know anything about higher education, but had this true just belief that education could lead to something special. And so they very much emphasized it in our household. As you mentioned, I had this great opportunity to go to an amazing school. It's actually the oldest high school in California. And I went to school with the sons and nephews of sort of the Silicon Valley elite. And it opened up incredible doors for me. The Jesuits were very supportive and very kind to me and my family. And that's where I got inculcated in that belief of being a man for others and doing for others. So not just having your own personal success, but using those platforms that I've been blessed to have and experience for the benefit of others. And so that's really where that ethos was really imprinted into me. And then obviously I had great academic opportunities, having gone to Harvard, then on to Stanford Law School. But in between, I was exposed to the great work at SEO, which I had never heard of something called investment banking or asset management or heaven forbid, private equity. But the program really opened up my eyes. It was one of those inflection points. We talk a lot about inflection points in our personal stories and our histories, and SEO certainly was a major inflection point, and it really kicked off my career, my professional interests into this really new world, and subsequently really laid the foundation for the professional successes that I've had.
Did you feel that from your SEO experience in 1994 that you came away with a good training so that when you started your first job at Lehman Brothers, you were prepared? You know, you felt, I can hold my own. I'm sure some of these other people know all about these things that I don't know about. But SEO, maybe just talk a little bit about that.
Sure. No, SEO is just incredible. And for me personally, it did three primary things. First, it gave you the technical know-how, with the events that we would have, not only during the workday, but after, where we got exposed to different types of banks, different types of departments. I knew nothing of this world. And so it really was a crash course in teaching me all of the ins and outs of what Wall Street really meant and what deal making was all about. So that was the first, was really technical know-how. Second, though, it was just this network that has been created, the SEO Alumni Network, and at the time it was small but mighty. And as you mentioned, now it's incredible. These are people who have done amazing things, continue to do amazing things, and you tapped into it. And I can point out just a couple of friends of mine who will be in the audience that evening in April, who have gone on to have incredible careers in finance and investment and in corporate America, and really SEO was the common link for all of us. And so this network. And then finally, I think what it did is it showed that even as we were building our careers, the importance of keeping top of mind the need to give back. Right. So the infamous words of Walter Booker, I can never forget when he did our orientation. This is not about you. We are here to help you so that you can help others. And that rang true then. It rings true today. And I'm very, very happy to be part of the SEO Alumni Network and to do my part to do for others.
Well, I can tell you, Javier, we're thrilled to have you part of this alumni, and being such a distinguished alumnus is even better. Now, you've ended up at the as president of the Coyotes. The picture behind you, or the scene behind you, is your stadium. You took a long, windy road to get to where you are today as the head of this organization. And I'm sure it wasn't easy. What happened? How'd you get there?
Every now and then I ask myself that same question. How did I get here? And you're right. I'm actually in our arena here, and it's a little cold, but happy to have this conversation there. How did I get here? Well, really, it starts with Alex Morello, the first owner in the first Latino owner in the NHL. He bought the team in 2019, and Alex's friend, a business partner. We actually happen to own the largest Latino home bank in California together. And, I was very excited for my friend to really accomplish something that he and his family had wanted to be involved with for a very long time, which was sports ownership. And, right before the pandemic really hit, he called me and he says, I really think you should do this. And, he said, it's not about sports being this cool industry, and it's not about doing deals or what have you. It's about the power of sports and the voice that sports has and the platform that it is to make a difference in people's lives. And he talked about wanting to win on the ice and bringing a Stanley Cup to Arizona, but about standing for more than just that, more than just being a sports team. It's about really leveraging the power of sports to make an impact. And that really resonated with me. At the time, I was managing director at Clear Lake Capital Group, founded by my actually roommate from Stanford, Jose Feliciano, someone who's had incredible amount of success himself. And I sat there, and you know what? It did ring true, this opportunity to leverage the power of sports to make an impact. And so I moved my family from Los Angeles to Arizona in the middle of a pandemic, just as we were about to enter the hottest summer in Arizona. They can be a little bit extreme here in the summer, but it has been an incredible experience, and really has been exactly what I had hoped for, which is this opportunity to use sports to talk about the opportunity to bring a diverse face to sports and to the table of decision making. And I'm very proud of some of the things we've done in a very short order. We have the largest female front office in the NHL. We have one of the largest Latino, executive teams in the NHL. And we're very, very focused, again, not on only just success on the ice, but success off the ice as an organization that really uses the power of sports to make an impact.
It's interesting you use the word focus now on what you're trying to do. I have a couple questions about it. One, on the focus side, one of the things we've found at KKR is in bringing in elite athletes, whether they have been professional athletes or outstanding college athletes, they turn out in almost all cases to be the best executives we could hire. And I really bring that back to a couple of terms: discipline and focus and determination. So those three things combined, maybe you can talk about it. You see it now with your team. You see the kind of training that they have to go through. Help us out on that a little bit.
No, it's incredible. I think you hit the nail on the head. Professional athletes are just incredible when it comes to, what they put themselves through, their mental discipline, and also their perseverance. I mean, the reality is that take hockey. The reality is you're going to take a fall. You're going to be on the ice throughout the game. And how do you come back up? And the ability to not just pick yourself up, but how does the team come together to put this little puck across the ice into the net? And, you have this just incredible amount of not only personal perseverance, but team determination in order to achieve a common goal. And so you see it every single day. I've been truly blessed to witness it firsthand, to not only get to know these amazing individuals, but amazing human beings who have persevered through, physical agonies. And I don't know, Henry, I know you're a hockey fan, but when you're sitting, right next to the ice, you see how fast and how much punishment the NHL players take, and to come at it time and time again with this goal of succeeding, it's just really inspiring. And I think it really blends into what we try to do off the ice. We try to be very determined to achieve success. The truth of the matter is we took over this team in a turnaround. This has been a challenged organization. There's been a lot of instability in various ownership groups. And we've tried to bring a sense of discipline, a sense of perseverance, a sense of commitment. I think I only get asked twice a day now whether or not we're going to move the team from Arizona. And it's always the same answer. This is the place we want to be. We are focused on succeeding. And so we bring that same mentality to what we do off the ice in terms of commitment, dedication, perseverance, and resilience.
So you've had quite a career, as I mentioned before, joining the Coyotes. What part of that have you found the most useful and helpful as you're now a CEO overseeing a very important NHL franchise?
Sure. I think you can attest to this. It comes down to people. It comes down to selecting the right team, incentivizing, motivating them, giving them the right tools and the right resources to succeed. I often talk about the fact that as leaders, it is our job primarily to put people in the position for them to succeed. And so that's what I focus a lot on, which is how do I help others achieve their own personal success for the benefit of the entire organization. But that's really the lesson that you learn over your career, is that it comes down to people. It comes down to your interaction, your motivation, your very clear communication of what expectations are and what the goals should be, and a constant iteration and a constant touching base with people. And so that's really what I've taken from my career in investments and business and finance into this role, because at the end of the day, I don't know how to skate. That's a little secret. I try not to tell too many people. So I really can't help the team on the ice. And so off the ice, really the focus is how can we put the best people in place and how can you help put them in a position for them to succeed?
Interesting you say that, and I know the audience would be interested in it. You see these players, as you mentioned earlier, just getting punished out on the ice and punishing as well. And they do it night after night after night. And it's a long season. What kind of training do these elite athletes go through to be in that kind of condition?
Sure. I mean, you're talking about some of the best physical shaped individuals in the world. And I truly mean that. They go through preparations year round. And what you're seeing is a lot of performance technology being brought to bear these days. We use, and we're very proud of the fact that we've made significant investments in our training, in our player development, in our recovery. I never knew there was such a thing as sleep science before I took on this role. But it's all of the above. We have nutritionists, we have chefs, we have everything that you need in order to keep these individuals in the best shape that they can. But it also comes down to them, to having that inner drive and that self-determination and that self-motivation to do this, because it's year round. Our season is long. We have 82 games basically through the winter, leading into the spring. But then in the off season, there's constant skills training, there's constant skating training, there's tournaments around the world. And so you just see it over and over again. And, I've been very fortunate to sit alongside, General Manager Bill Armstrong, who was one of my first hires here, who won a Stanley Cup in St. Louis. And, what he basically said is, we're going to build this from the ground up, and it's going to be drafting well, and it's going to be developing players and developing them physically, mentally. We also have a lot of mental performance resources that we bring to the team. And so it's all of the above. It's a constant year-round process. It is not only physical, but it's mental. It's having the skills, but it's also having that interpersonal development. You know, one of my favorite moments was at the end of the preseason this year. We took all the families and we took them up to a rodeo, and the sort of team building that you have to constantly do in order to find success is also a key component of this. But it's just incredible. These individuals, you know, they take in a physical punishment, a mental punishment, and yet this is their dream. This is what they've always wanted to do, and we're excited to be in this business.
Now, I want to change subjects a minute and talk a little bit about what you personally have done and what the team has done with the Latinx community, particularly in the Phoenix area. Obviously, hockey has not been known as a Latinx sport. Are there more and more Latinx players joining in hockey? And what are you doing to develop that community into hockey players?
Yeah. Well, first, it's not only what we're doing, but also the league. You know, I really tip my hat to Gary Bettman, Bill Daly, and Kim Davis, the chief diversity officer for the league, in saying that this community, which is such a growth cohort, when you think of the economic centers of America and you think of the NHL cities, places like Los Angeles and Las Vegas, Washington, D.C., you know, the Latino community is such a major growth cohort, and the league's efforts to really tap into it have been fantastic. As far as what we're doing, well, it starts with the fact that 43% of the Phoenix greater of the Valley here is Latino, and yet less than 3% of my season ticket holders are. And so that just makes not only you know, business sense, but it's the right thing to do to truly reflect what this community looks like in terms of my fan base, in terms of my player base. You know, what are we doing? We're doing three things primarily. One, we're being intentional about this. We're making it very clear that this is a community and a growth cohort that we're going to tap into. And we're doing so on a constant basis. It's part of everything that we do in our business strategy. Second, we're being very authentic. So we're going out and partnering with community groups, with Title I schools that have a majority Latino, you know, school population, and we're being part of their experience. We're doing hockey clinics in the schools. We're doing reading programs. I personally go out and do a school assembly at least once or twice a month in these types of community organizations and schools. But it's also, you know, being innovative. And we're thinking about our content. We're thinking about our food. We're thinking about our merchandising. And it all doesn't just have to be in Spanish language. We talk a lot about being in language and in culture. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is just say, hey, you are part of our thought process. You are welcome. It is up to us to open our doors. It is up to us to extend our hand and to do it constantly. This isn't just episodic. We're not just doing this for, you know, Hispanic Heritage Month or for certain special events. This is something we're doing consistently. And again, when you just look at the growth cohorts in America, young, female, diverse, and in a place like Arizona that is very much Latino, tech savvy and purpose driven, it makes the right business sense for us to do this. I am very proud of being the first Latino president CEO, working alongside the first Latino owner. And we're being very unapologetic about saying this is a community that we want to be part of what we're doing.
We'll continue on with that because it's fascinating what you both are doing, and thank you for doing that because, you know, diversity and inclusion is so important. Shame on all of us for being late to the game, but now we're trying to make up for this. I have to say, KKR is no different than most companies where we didn't have as much diversity, nor did Wall Street for that matter, as we're now starting to make. It's going to take time. It will not happen overnight. But if we all as leaders make a real effort, I think we can make enormous strides and progress in this area. So just carrying that further, how do you think the pathway forward in sports in general, not the Coyotes, but just in general, in diversity and inclusion?
Well, I think it's first by accepting that this isn't just a values decision. This is a business decision. When you have diverse voices at the seat of decision making, you make better business decisions. You have more creativity, you have more productivity. And so just accepting that having these diverse voices at the table in positions of authority within sports, I think is truly important. And so I'm excited that you're seeing this conversation happen. What we need now is action. We need to make sure that you have individuals in these seats that are saying this is important and that are taking steps to actually implement it, whether it's in the front office, in the ownership ranks, at the league offices. And so I'm excited that is, I think, a movement, not a moment, as my good friend Kim Davis at the NHL is often quoted as saying. And so being a part of that is very exciting. But, it can't just stop there. It has to truly be, how do we welcome? I talk a lot about our three key pillars as a business plan: our impact, inclusion, and innovation. And inclusion really is bringing diverse voices to the seat of decision making, but it also means true inclusion of saying, how do we include every community? How do I go out and bring the Asian American community and the African American community, the Latino community, females to be part of what the Coyotes not only are as a sports team, but what we stand for as an organization? And so how do we truly include every community and become very welcoming? And I think that's what's important in sports. When you think about sports as an industry, it's a very high profile consumer business. And so we have to look at what those consumers in America look like and what the growth cohorts look like. And we have to go and we have to open our doors and be very welcoming and say, we're thinking of you when we think about our merchandising, our in-game experience, when we think about our philanthropy and the organizations that we're involved with. And so I think sports teams and sports leagues really are well-intentioned, and now becomes about execution. And I think you've seen that as well on Wall Street and in places in private equity. I think there's an intent to do better. Now it's about execution of doing better. And I'm happy to be in this role, to be a part of that. I'll tell you a quick story. At the beginning of this season, we had a development camp in which I was approached by a documentarian to have 2 African-American coaches be part of our coaching staff. And so we did this diverse coaching internship, and it was phenomenal. And all of a sudden, you now have 2 coaches that can say, I was on the bench of an NHL team. I have that experience. I now have this network of NFL coaches that I've coached alongside, even if for a brief moment. And that's what it means to open those doors and to truly be inclusive and create opportunity. At the end of the day, this is about creating more opportunity and really, really creating more success because of that opportunity that is created.
Well, very well said. And thank you for everything that you're doing in this area. Let me wrap up with one last question, and I could go on for a long time talking to you. I find it fascinating, your background and all. But one of the areas that you have been front and center on, you touched on it, of what you're doing with the club as far as giving back, reaching out to the community. How has the spirit of quote unquote giving back really permeated what you've done over the last few decades?
Yeah, well, listen, impact is at the core of what we do as an organization, and really the whole concept of being a man for others, that again was bred into me by my Jesuit education, has really been a common link. I ran a real estate private equity firm in which what we did were the first workforce housing funds to invest in urban communities, backed by public pension funds in the country. And so that moved on to then again running the family office for Alex Morello, in which we hired a bevy of diverse managers and executives, and really brought diversity into the leadership ranks of all of our portfolio companies, and also targeted these diverse audiences. So you have this common link of my career, and now, as I often say, sports is the platform, but really making an impact is my purpose. And when you think of what we've attempted to try to do here, it's really having impact at that core, as that the middle of all the concentric circles of all of our activity. We feel really, really honored to be in sports, right? Sports convenes, sports brings joy and excitement, and it brings hope. And what it also really does is it gives you this platform to really make a difference in people's lives, to talk about these issues of the importance of diversity, to really animate and make people believe in themselves and in the success that they can have, not just as athletes, but as individuals in the world. And so it's really been core to what we do. It's not just let's put it out and it's part of what our foundation does. It's really what we think about every single day. We are in an industry that has this high profile voice, this megaphone, and we're using it to really, really try to make a difference in other people's lives.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. It reminds me of a time many years ago that I was fortunate enough to have lunch with David Rockefeller, who I considered one of the great philanthropists. And I'd called him, asked him if we could have lunch together, because I wanted to talk to him about his philosophy of giving. And I was just starting to make a little money, and I've thought about what do I do to help and to give back. And he gave me a piece of advice that I've used and thought about often since then. And that is, don't just write a check, get involved. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter what the organization is, get involved, give your time, your leadership, your expertise, and help that organization. And you'd be amazed, he said, how much enjoyment and how much pleasure you're going to get out of helping others and seeing the results of what you've been able to do. And so I am completely in agreement with you and on board. And with that, I've got to thank you very much for taking the time to have this conversation with me. I can't tell you how thrilled and happy I am personally that you've agreed to let us honor you, particularly since you're a very distinguished SEO alum. I know people will love meeting you at our annual dinner on April 21, and we look forward to all being together. And so thank you very much for everything you do for diversity and inclusion, and thank you for everything you're doing for SEO.
Henry, thank you for your leadership and for your commitment as well. You personally have truly been an inspiration for so many. And I just want to thank you personally. I want to take this opportunity to thank you. And, I really want to thank SEO. It truly changed my life. I can honestly say that I would not be sitting here or in many of my roles without SEO. And so it's my pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you, and I'm looking forward to the event on April 21st. And I'm excited to see so many friends and colleagues and really in supporting this great mission of SEO.
Great. Thanks very much, Javier. Stay well. Right now, it's my pleasure and real honor to introduce and to welcome a business leader whose career and experience have elevated him, I must say, to legendary status. And I'm particularly happy to call Ken my friend. Ken is best known for his exceptional tenure as the chairman and CEO at American Express. He did this for a period of he was 17 of his 37 years while he was at American Express. Ken, I must say that's a long tenure for any CEO, although it's okay. George and I just turned over the reins after 45 years. So anyway, the one thing about Ken is he's compassionate, he's driven, he's an incredibly strategic leader. And as well as his success at American Express, it made him clearly one of the most respected and admired CEOs in the country. In addition to that, being one of the first Black Americans to lead a Fortune 500 company. Ken retired in 2018 and is now chairman and managing director at General Catalyst, an exceptional venture capital firm where he works to scale businesses, to find new companies that have the potential to become global institutions. One of the things that I'm particularly impressed with, Ken, is what you've done in being a co-founder along with Ken Frazier in 110, which is a not-for-profit committed to creating 1 million jobs for Black Americans over the next 10 years. And we'll talk about that as we get into it. So we're thrilled to welcome you tonight, Ken. And clearly, Ken is a giant in business and in the philanthropic community. And Ken, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, Henry, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm a big fan of yours and value our friendship, and I am a devoted supporter of SEO.
Well, we know that, and thank you for letting us honor you. Honestly, I think it's long overdue, and we couldn't be happier that you've agreed to be honored this year. So let's just jump right into our discussion. And you've accomplished so much in your career, and I know that a large part of what has driven you over the years is really the values that you picked up from your family when you were growing up, the lessons that you learned from your parents and watching them and listening to them, and how that's guided you throughout your career. Could you talk to us about that? Because I think that's the foundation of what you built on.
Sure, you're absolutely right, Henry. My parents made an incredible impact on me growing up. And what I'd also say is the environment that I grew up, because I grew up during the civil rights era. And one of the points that I make often is that I was born literally 3 years before Brown v. Board of Education. And so I was the beneficiary of striking down separate but equal laws in the United States. And what I think was important about my upbringing is, one, my father and mother strongly valued education, and they both had the good fortune to go to college. My father became a dentist, and what they imbued in their children was a commitment really to excellence. I had a very close relationship with my father, but he was also very demanding. And what was important to him was, despite any obstacles that were in front of us, we needed to work to overcome those obstacles. The second thing I think that was very important is I saw in my parents, they really embodied integrity, honesty. They were hardworking. They were people who helped other people. And so one of the things that I think was very important about my parents is they also inculcated in us a pride of who we were, proud to be Black, but also to open our horizons, that we could achieve things that on the surface were being denied to us. And so I think that emphasis on striving was absolutely critical.
Did you ever think when you were young that you could attain the kind of success that you ended up doing because you were Black, or in spite of being Black?
Yeah, I think, very frankly, Henry, certainly I did not have a real knowledge and understanding of the business world. But one of the things that I felt at an early age, and I think my parents encouraged me, is that I could be a leader. And so for a period of time, I thought I'd be a civil rights leader. Then I thought I might be in politics. And I'll just tell you one story. My mother, this would have been in 1955, was meeting with the headmaster of the school that I went to. And the headmaster said, well, what do you want for your children? She said, I want them to be good, honest people, but I want them, if they want to be president of the United States, I want them to have the confidence that they could do that. Now, fortunately, my mother never told me that story. I found it out when I graduated from high school, and the principal said, that was just an amazing statement and really opened my eyes to the aperture that was important for you to have.
You know, it's really interesting following on with that. One of the things that I've noticed here at KKR is that when we have hired people who were elite athletes growing up, whether particularly college, but high school as well, high school, college, that they turned out to be incredible executives. And one of the reasons that we found is that the focus that a person has, the drive, the determination to not to give up, the hard work that it takes to accomplish that, and that type of structure and focus at a younger age carries over very well. Now, when you were growing up and you went to Bowdoin to college, my understanding is that you were a very good athlete. You played soccer and you ran track in college, and you actually played basketball as well. Could you beat Julius Erving, your friend, in one-on-one or not? How'd that go?
Well, it's a great story. You know, to your point, Henry, I was just incredibly passionate about sports and loved basketball, track and soccer. But in basketball, I realized by the time I got to high school, and I played in high school, was that I wasn't going to be a giant in physical stature. And Julius, what I would say is in 7th and 8th grade, I held my own, but he grew around 10 inches after that. So there was a big difference.
But follow up on how you might have been helped by your college athletics that you did.
Yeah, I think, Henry, for me, I will say, and if there's any young people listening, I was, until my sophomore year in high school, a relatively indifferent student. I tested well, but I only really applied myself to things that I really liked. And when I, going into my junior year, I sort of became a little bit more mature. And in college, playing 3 sports. So I played soccer in the fall, winter track and spring track. It really forced me to be very disciplined in allocating my time. I developed an incredible interest in history and economics. And I think that the impact of having to balance off my time to really decide how I use both my personal time as well as how I focus on my studies, I think sports gave me a major advantage. And I would say one of the other things, Henry, that I think, because I know you were an athlete also, winning and losing and how you behave and how you overcome that. And particularly when you've really worked hard and you think you're really performing at an elite level and someone else beats you. What do you do? How do you overcome that? And I think that I really credit my determination and resolve and the ability to think, even though I've lost, I can win the next time. has been very important in my development.
And it's also the same thing in business.
Right.
You're not going to win every contract you go after. You're not going to get every employee you want to try to hire, but pick yourself up and stay in the game.
That's right. I think, one of the things that I often tell people is that when you're in the game, you can't predict everything that will happen. And so the other thing that I think is important is the ability to adapt and the resiliency that you need when I think you're playing competitive sports.
Without a doubt. Now, when you were at Bowdoin, carrying on there, in addition to being a very good athlete and part of the soccer and track teams, one of the things that I understand you focused on was the role of Black Americans and the role of young Blacks, and how you all could change society, change a role in society. How did your time at Bowdoin in working on this and recruiting and convincing professors and the president to recruit more Black students and professors, how did your time at Bowdoin shape you, in addition to what you talked about with your family?
Yeah, I think what was very important about my experience is I went to college in the 70s. So that was during the anti-Vietnam War, Black Power, host of challenges confronting our society. And one of the things that I felt and a number of other students felt was that Bowdoin needed to recruit more Black students. And we were able to speak to the administration and go through the reasons why, and also emphasize that we needed to bring in Black faculty. But I think what was important and the experience for me was, at a relatively young age, having to develop an approach and a mission. So I clearly felt very strongly on the issue, but what were the strategies and tactics that we would put in place? How could we enlist support from different segments of the college community? And I think what was very, very important was we not only made progress, but I think we were able to get buy-in by the faculty, the administration, and the rest of the student body.
Did it work?
I think that it's still, and you and I have talked about the whole issue of diversity and race, Henry. It's a long journey. And what I would say is that we certainly increased the recruitment, we increased the number of Black faculty members, and Bowdoin is still making progress. But this is not an issue that is going to be solved overnight. It takes steadfast commitment.
Couldn't agree more. And I'm hoping that executives in the US will continue the fight, will continue the focus, because you're 100% right. This doesn't happen overnight. We can't push a button and make things right that have been wrong for a long time. So I agree with you on that. Now, let me just change for a minute and go on to your law school days at Harvard. Now, you were at Harvard with a couple pretty great guys that became, legends in their own right. Ted Wells, a super lawyer, and of course, Ken Frazier, who went on to, in spite of being a lawyer, went on to run Merck and was a terrific CEO there. Can you talk about a little bit of your time at Harvard, how that influenced you, and just in thinking about business and law and social impact?
Good. So, Henry, I think what was important, I often say this to young people, there are a wide variety of tactics and strategies that people use. For me, it was to try to do things that I was really passionate about, to embrace uncertainty. And so when I went to law school, I thought maybe I would be a litigator again. I still didn't know a lot about business, but what was exciting to me about going to Harvard Law School at that time was I felt a level of energy. I obviously incredibly bright people, but people that were very driven, that really wanted to make a difference in society and business and law. And so I found that really stimulating. And what I also did is I recognized, well, I don't know a lot about business. So I actually took a number of corporate law courses to educate myself, and actually audited a few courses at Harvard Business School. And then at the same time, again, this was still the 70s, because I finished law school in 1976. There was a small group of Black students there. And one of the things I want to be clear about is we fraternized and associated with all types of students. I had friends from all quarters, all around the world. But Ken Frazier was 2 years behind me, and we knew each other a little bit in law school, but we became friends, particularly when Ken saw the light and came over to the business side. And Ted Wells was someone who I was really mystified that he was getting a joint degree at Harvard Business School and the law school, and everyone thought he was going to go into business. And he's become, as you know, an outstanding litigator. And I think what is important there is, and I believe anyone who came out of the 60s and 70s, no matter who they are, wanted to make an impact on the world at large. And one of the things that I think is important is, matching yourself up against some really highly ambitious, highly intelligent people, I think was a great experience for me. And the law was a useful discipline for me. And I practiced law for 2 years. And I would like to say to you that I planned I would go to Bain and then go to Amex. But the reality is I had a good friend who'd gone to Harvard Business School who said, "You always struck me as someone who'd be good in business. Why don't you come interview at Bain and Company?" And that's how I made the switch into business.
But it's interesting. I often say to younger people who think they know exactly what they want to do when they come out of college, they've got their career all marked out and it's going to happen exactly as they think. And I try to tell them, I said, look, just get in the game. You never can tell who you may meet. I'm sure that's exactly what you learned. And when you talk about embracing uncertainty, you can't wait at home and hope your phone's going to ring and that perfect job is going to come along.
Absolutely. I think about my first few months at Bain and Company. I was literally thrown in the water. I knew just a little bit of accounting for lawyers, which wasn't that much. And so I had to learn accounting, cost accounting, strategy, but being thrown in there, I think was one of the best experiences, because I know, Henry, the way you operate. The reality is, I think you've always got to look for opportunities to learn and opportunities to really test your abilities. And it doesn't mean in every single area you're going to be the best. But I find those people who are intellectually curious, who are passionate, and who can define what it means to win and have the right values, I don't care what they do, they're going to be successful.
So you went to American Express. I don't know how long exactly you were at Bain, but for a while, and then American Express lured you to come over there, and you were there. What was it that lured you to American Express?
So again, follow your passion. So I was at Bain for 2.5 years. I was happy at Bain. I wasn't looking at all. And a recruiter called and said American Express was looking for 1 or 2 people in sort of a middle management strategic planning role. And the person who was doing the search at Amex, the leader was Lou Gerstner, who you know well. And I had just read an article about American Express doing a joint venture with Warner Cable. So to date myself, I thought cable was the next incredible technology. And so it wasn't that I was interested in the payments business at all. I thought that I would learn about cable and then maybe do something on my own. So I went to American Express with a view that that's what I was going to work on. And you know how the world works. Within a week, I was assigned to something else. And it was to do a consulting project for a direct marketing fulfillment house. And I said to myself, how boring is that? I've left Bain & Company, and I thought I was going to be in cable. But what it turned out, Henry, was data analytics was what drove this direct mail fulfillment house. So I got in the early stage of data analytics and information management and marketing. And so direct mail, as you know, became direct response. And so that's another point that I make to people is don't always look at the surface of the opportunity. Look at the full range of the opportunity. And I will tell you, going and having that assignment positioned me incredibly well in the company because American Express in a few years recognized the importance of data analytics.
That's extremely well said. And it's one of the hardest things, though, to teach somebody is to, the way I like to describe it, think of whatever it is you're about to take on as a movie, and it's a series of still photos that will become something down the road. Too many times people just look at one of the still frames, and in the meantime, the movie's gone on. Absolutely. And so I like to say to people, when you're going to get involved with a company, think about where could you take it? What could you do with this company?
Absolutely.
So you had a couple of mentors at American Express when you first got there. One, Lou Gerstner, that you've talked about, and Harvey Golub. A lot of people on the that will listen to this interview are, wondering, does a mentor make sense? Does a mentor help you and really help? We try to fill that role many ways through SEO, through the SEO career.
Yes.
Can you talk about what they meant to you as you were growing up at American Express?
Yeah, so I would say, Henry, for me, mentors have been very important, and I'd emphasize, I've benefited obviously from Lou's mentorship, Harvey's, Jim Robinson's. But the other thing that I say to people is mentors come in a range of ways to you. And what I looked at for a mentor is who had really good judgment. Who could I learn from? Would they give me unvarnished feedback? And could they give me good advice? And so there's some mentors, obviously, who can help you in almost every area. But I also found that there were some mentors at American Express who had relatively low-level positions, but they could give me some really good advice. And the point I make to people is when someone says to me, I need to have a mentor and I have to really expand my network, the comment that I make to them is, make sure you have something to network with. It's not about getting 100 business cards. You've got to make sure that you're developing your skills and capabilities, because part of the trade with a mentor is a mentor wants to say, boy, I'm really proud of what Henry did. Henry is actually adding to me when I have a conversation with him. And so I think mentorship comes in different stages. It has to evolve. But I think the best mentees end up getting the best mentors because they have something to contribute. And a number of people can give you a look, but at the end of the day, what you want is someone who, as I said, is going to give you unvarnished feedback, but then also give you some advice about how to deal with your shortcomings, how to build on some of your strengths, and what might be some moves that you should think about. However, once you decide if you've weighed that advice in a good way, a good mentor doesn't say, well, you didn't take my advice, so I'm not going to deal with you anymore. That's not a good mentor.
I had a mentor growing up, several of them actually, along the lines of what you're talking about. And I look back, and even today, the advice they gave me then still plays a central role in how I think, how I act, how I conduct, and I pass that on to the next generation and try to help them along the same ways. And so you're 100% right. It's a real partnership when there's this mentor-mentee relationship, and it becomes a partnership, and it's got to go both ways. Now, you became CEO at American Express. I don't know if you had your sights set on that at some point in your life or not, but it was clear in the 90s, because I kept hearing it all the time, that, keep an eye on this young man named Ken Chenault. He's going somewhere, and he probably be our next CEO. And the next thing you know, you became the CEO. And so no sooner did that happen, and then tragically 9/11 hit. And you were thrown into a real tragic situation, because as I understand it and remember it, you lost 11 or so employees at the time at American Express, and yet you guided the company, even though you were new in the role, with real aplomb, calmness, knew exactly what you had to do. How did you get that strength where you hadn't been in the job long enough?
So, Henry, you certainly were a terrific leader yourself during 9/11. But to your point, I remember I was in Salt Lake City when the attack happened, and I couldn't communicate with my people except those who were outside of New York. And one of the things that I did was, which I think is very important in a crisis, is you have to think about what needs to happen immediately, but also try to do it in a context to understand what might have long-term implications. And so for American Express, as I think for all of us, first you got to focus on safety and security of your people. And that was absolutely critical to me. And we actually made sure that we accounted for all of our people. Then I heard about the fatalities of our employees, our colleagues, and one of the things I tried to do immediately is to reach out over those next few days to family members and go out and visit them and try to console them. And then within the organization, literally within 2 hours, I got together most of the top leadership team. And what I said to them was that they needed to lead with decisiveness and compassion. And I think sometimes people get those two things confused, that they think as a leader, you shouldn't be empathetic, when in fact, you absolutely should be empathetic. And however, some people will say, well, if you're empathetic, then you shouldn't be decisive. You've got to be decisive. And so what was important in developing our approach was, one, to let my leadership team know how I was going to judge them, to also give them some help of, here are some of the key things that need to happen. I mean, we knew that, for example, we couldn't go back to our building. So that same day, we looked for alternative real estate space that we could be in. Obviously, the first priority were the families of those that were killed, our employees. And then, very frankly, what we also developed was, what are some of the short-term business issues that we had to deal with? And I think what is critical is, I do think leadership reputations are made or lost during times of crisis. I always tell people, it's not personal, not making a value judgment, but if you don't rise to the occasion, you're going to have difficulty asserting that you're a leader. And that's just the harsh reality that people need to face. I think the other thing we did is, I recognized that I needed to reach out to people in a very personal way, not just through emails and letters. And so we got 6,000 people together in the tri-state area and went into Madison Square Garden. And I didn't give a speech. I just talked to people about how I felt about the 11 employees and their families, how I felt about them. I also talked to them because there was a lot of commentary by analysts in the press that American Express was not going to be able to overcome it. And I went through the reasons why I believed American Express was not only going to survive, but was going to emerge stronger. And this goes to one of my maxims of leadership that I came across when I was 23. It's a quote from Napoleon that I paraphrase, that the role of a leader is to define reality and give hope. And I think about that every day because, as you know, Henry, it's very hard to define reality. And that's what I tried to do in 9/11, but that's not enough. What are the reasons, concrete reasons, motivational reasons why people should be hopeful? And what I'm very proud about is that American Express really emerged from the crisis stronger than ever.
So you went on from there, and it's an incredibly moving story you've now just told about that time. You faced other crises, obviously nothing like what you particularly went through at 9/11, but you had the global financial crisis, and then there was the whole question of, okay, will the financial system stay together? Will all of these banks go out of business? And you were right in the middle of that as well. You had another hiccup when you lost the Costco partnership that you'd had for a long time, and yet your leadership came through. I saw it from afar. I saw it a little closer in some cases. And I saw compassion, calmness, real civility. Tell us how, to add on to that, how do you do all of this and keeping your humanity? I love your quote define reality and giving hope. And there's so much truth to that. Any lessons there?
Yeah. So I think, Henry, one of the things that I believe very strongly as a leader is you have to be demanding. You do have to be demanding, because at the end of the day, I want to win. If I'm in the game, I want to win. I really do. But at the same time, I think integrity, having empathy, and one of the important things I think from a leadership standpoint is you need to show composure. Because particularly in a crisis, people are looking to you for strength, and they're looking to you for reassurance. And again, I would say my childhood, my personal experiences, sports, I've been under pressure. And what I saw was that the athletes who lost their cool rarely ended up winning the game. And that's something really that I thought about very consciously is I gotta show composure. And what's absolutely important is I've got to show some heart. And I think, one of the things I always say to people is the best leaders, to me, understand that they want to capture the hearts and minds of their people. But I said, understand it's hearts and minds, not one or the other. And at the end of the day, one of the things I feel strongly about, Henry, is if you want to lead, you have to be willing to serve. So that's part of my mentality. And then second is, I really believe that leadership is a privilege. And so you have a responsibility, a deep responsibility to lead. And I take that very seriously. So if I come apart, too many people are depending on me. And so I think you've got to have that balance.
Really well said. And you were in a very important position. American Express was not, a tiny company. It was probably one of the best brands around, still is today. As you stepped into your role, did you think about, okay, I'm one of the first Black executive CEOs of a Fortune 500 company, and you talk about leadership and responsibility. And when you took on that role, you obviously had to have that in your mind. And you obviously had to think about, is there some special role that I can play in the Black community, particularly from the position that I have at American Express, to help others move forward?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things, Henry, that I said when I was appointed is, one, I thought that there were people as qualified as I was through time that never got the opportunity. And that I had to be a role model. I knew I was going to be scrutinized more closely than a white CEO was going to be scrutinized. And also proactively, I wanted to demonstrate to the Black community that being CEO of a company like American Express was possible, but that I wasn't going to forget who I was and what my responsibilities were. And so I wanted, clearly, back to the point I made earlier, having grown up in the civil rights movement and understanding all the sacrifices that were made for me, that I had a deep responsibility. And some people would say to me, well, can you really be the CEO of American Express, but still also be focused on the Black community? I said, I don't have a choice. I absolutely need to be. And I do believe I can do both.
And you've done that exceptionally well. And then when you step down, probably 95% of CEOs, when they step down, they retire and they go off and play golf or whatever they do. And you've now created maybe a fourth career besides the others that you'd had previously by joining General Catalyst, becoming their chairman and managing director. What motivated you to do that?
So one, and Henry, we've talked about this because I know you feel the same way. I really love technology, and I think technology is an incredible enabler. And my view was, and is, that technology is transforming all businesses, all industries, our society, and back to my belief that you should do things you feel passionate about. I said, I want to be on the forefront of change. And I think what was also important to me is I do think that the technology sector, the venture capital sector, people don't always think about the consequences of different technologies, the impacts, and what's their responsibility. Because the view sometimes is, look, all I do is I put out the technology. I don't have to worry about what happens. I don't think that's the right approach. And frankly, it's not an enduring approach. And what I mean by that is I'm interested in working with companies at early stages, late stages, but the criteria for me is, does that founder want to build an enduring company? It doesn't mean the company won't be sold at some point or change in certain ways, but you got to have that mindset. And if you want to build an enduring company, and I know you're doing this at KKR, what you can't say is that I don't want to be involved in any aspects of society. Just let me do my own thing. And I frankly believe that in the technology sector, we need to have a greater level of responsibility. And with the advances in AI and machine learning, we should be able to figure out some of the unintended consequences of what technology is doing. So I'm really, as you know, super excited and passionate about what I'm doing. I love working with young, energetic, passionate people who really do want to make a difference. And one of my strong views is most people, I don't know of many people who would start a company saying, I don't really want to have this company have a positive impact on society. But the issue is how to do it. And so that's the opportunity. And what I also want to be very clear about is I believe that we should be able to have very attractive investment returns. So this is not well, let's do a little bit worse to do better, because I don't think that's enduring. That doesn't last. So I want to have really attractive investment returns, but that's not enough. I want to be involved with companies that are having a positive impact on our society.
I'm sure you've read Henry Kissinger and Eric Schmidt's new book,
Yes.
which really, I think, hits the nail on the head of what you've just talked about there, and the implications of AI and technology, and that there's much more to it than just data-driven. It's what are the outcomes, and how does this affect human lives, et cetera. And it affects countries, it affects corporations. And I'm not sure yet there's enough thought put into that question there. But I
there
think
is not. And one of the things, we've developed a concept at General Catalyst that we call responsible innovation. And because it shouldn't be contradictory, that you should be able to be responsible, you should be able to innovate, you should understand the unintended consequences. And our view is, let's start with founders that are building companies, creating companies. And so I would say, Henry, we have a lot of work to do, but back to a thirst for challenge. I love the challenge, and I believe I have the responsibility.
got another responsibility that you've certainly taken a very important upfront position on, and that is being a leading voice in social justice and civil rights, and for the importance of diversity and inclusion. You've always thought that, and you've always felt it, and you've been, steadfast in your belief on that. And yet somehow, with all of the good work that you and others have done to date, there's still only, I believe, about 4 Black CEOs of major Fortune 500 companies. And there's still a lack of diversity on boards of directors. Anything that you think we should be thinking about, and lead us in also to what you're doing in 110 with 10, because I think they tie together and they're very important. It'll become a funnel.
So one of the things I would say, Henry, is you've got to take a multi-layered approach, as we know. There's not a one solution approach. And I think first at the CEO level, I think it's embarrassing that we're at this stage that we only have 4 Black CEOs. I think what's important there, and this is a little bit of my handful theory, is you've got to have representation at different levels throughout an organization. But as we all know, only a few are going to get to the top. So my view is identify some of the high potential people. And I will tell you that one of the things I've seen is at American Express, we have people coming up who in fact could have the top job. And the reality is that we've been persistent and we've been focused. And, I think, for example, what you're doing with SEO, I know what you're doing with KKR, because we've had, not just in the last 2 years, you haven't been on this in the last 2 years, not after post George Floyd, you've been on this for a decade. And one of the things that I tell CEOs is, think about making progress here like you would in some of your most important business objectives and strategies. And understand that, one, as much as possible, make sure at all levels of your organization, you're focused on increasing the representation so you have a more diverse group. But then as you're thinking about moving people up to the top, be really demanding. I mean, one of the things that really annoys me, a pet peeve, is when someone will say, well, we have a high potential list. We've got a list in general, and then we have a list of diverse people. So I say to them, well, what you're saying to me is they're going to be hardly any diverse people that will ultimately move up because you station them. Now, that's different from saying, boy, we've got some really high-powered, diverse candidates. Are we giving them opportunities to grow? Because don't just identify that they're high potential. What are you doing to give this person the experience? How are you testing them? How are you giving them feedback? Give them tough feedback. I mean, in a lot of cases, diverse people don't get really honest feedback. And that's critical in the development. So I will tell you, people have asked, this is hard, but I would say it's not complex. And what you can't do, and I see it in a range of organizations, they try something for a year or two, and then they drop it. And it just, doesn't work. And I think what the leaders in an organization need to be clear is the commitment to diversity is non-negotiable. Tangible progress has to be made. Just as we would in a business, what are the outcome measures that we have to put in place? And then I will just tell you, there are, in each of the cases, in my case, I was very fortunate at an early stage in my career that I exposure to Jim Robinson, to Sandy Wilde, to Harvey Golub. And fortunately, I was able to do well with them. But without some of the individual commitment to giving me opportunities, I could have been cast in the wayside, particularly in the early to mid stage of my career. And so all I can say, Henry, is demand results, put in initiatives, obviously, to achieve those results, but you got to be persistent. And in what other business issue would we say after 20 years, this is about all we could do? I'm sorry. That doesn't cut it for me.
I couldn't agree more. And I am quite concerned that the focus on diversity obviously was elevated substantially after the George Floyd killing. But I'm worried that it dies down, that the new executives come into place. There's not the pressure on them that might have been on their predecessor, and sort of it starts to dissipate.
Yeah.
My view is very simple, and my view about it, and I know you would agree with this, and I know it's SEO's view and why I'm so passionate about this through SEO, is we've got to do everything we can to stick with it and to get more people of color positions where they can succeed.
That's absolutely it, Henry. One of the things that I think is, I want to talk a little bit about 110, because I think, as you said, it really is part of the puzzle that we're trying to solve. Is one of the concerning things is 80% of the jobs with a salary of $60,000 or above require a college degree. And what Ken and I decided, and we also, as you know, Jenny Rometty, who's co-chair, Kevin Scherer, Charles Phillips, what we said was, we need to change that, because there are a significant percentage of jobs that don't require a college degree. And let's move from just credentials to a skills first approach. And one of the things that I think is important is, while this effort is geared to Black Americans, the reality is changing the specifications of jobs opens up the opportunity for all Americans. And I think that's important as we deal with the challenges of diversity and race and color, is we've got to define what the win-win is. And clearly, there is, to me, nothing more impactful than people having family-sustaining jobs. The stability that it gives the family, the stability that it gives the community is enormous. But one of the things we did, Henry, to your point about resolve post-George Floyd, is I felt very strongly that we needed to have companies make a 10-year commitment. And some companies said, boy, that's a long time. I said, yeah, this is going to be a long journey. We need that 10-year commitment to jobs, that financial commitment. And I think what is exciting, we now have 60 companies, and people are understanding how difficult this is, but they're also understanding that there's steps that can be taken that can make a major difference. So while we're in the early days, I'm encouraged by the progress we've made in the last year, and I'm very hopeful and confident for the future.
And what are you asking companies to do? You have 60 companies now. What are you asking them to achieve?
So each of them, we've asked them, they have to make a jobs commitment, and they make a financial commitment. They have to be involved in reskilling programs, in training and development, in employee acquisition. And for each company, we're working on a strategy. So one company, for example, needed some help on training people in data analytics and data management. And they didn't fully understand how they could create apprenticeship programs. And so we have connected them with several companies that are doing that. And then the other thing we're doing is a real sharing of best practices that is making a big difference. But the point is to have accountability for yearly outcomes as well as moderate to long-term outcomes.
And part of the objective is to set targets for each company and their hiring.
Yes,
numbers.
Absolutely. And both, what I think is important here, Henry, is it's both hiring, external hires, but also look at your Black employees in your company. There are a number of people that, in fact, are proven in your organization, but they don't have a career path because of the 4-year college degree requirement. Now, let me be very clear. I'm a strong believer in college and higher education, but I'm also a strong believer that we need to ensure that we are helping all stratas of our society. And this is not charity. The reality is we are saying, and this is very, very clear, we don't believe that there should be any reduction in quality, productivity. We're saying all of our people have to perform at or better. So there's no lowering of standards here, but what we are doing, and I am not apologetic for it at all, is we're saying, let's open up the opportunity.
What we say at SEO is that there's not a supply problem, it's more a demand problem. And there's not enough demand for diverse talent.
You're absolutely right, Henry.
And there has to be. So let me wrap it up with one last thing. And you've accomplished a lot in your career, and you're continuing to accomplish an enormous amount through General Catalyst. How do you want to be remembered for your leadership, the work you're doing, and just you as a human being?
So I would say very simply for me, Henry, is, I'm proud of my successes in business and in giving back. But the most important thing I'd like to be remembered for is that I was a good father, a good husband, and I made a meaningful difference in people's lives.
What a great way to end this incredible conversation. I knew I was right when I asked you to be our honoree. And so thank you very much, Ken. We look forward to seeing you at our gala in April. You've been a huge draw already, and we're doing fine and getting people to come just as we have in the past. And this is terrific. I'll see you hopefully long before then, but thank you and stay well. God bless.
Thank you, Henry. All the best to you. And again, SEO is just an incredible organization. And thank you and William for your outstanding leadership.
Well, we're so thankful for your insights that you've given us tonight and your wisdom. And we're certainly looking forward to honoring you at our annual awards dinner. So thanks very much, Ken.
Thank you very much.
Take care.